the farmers never had a problem of cultivating their and cultivation and watering of their crops. It was never an issue for them, so they had bountiful crops. Okay. Besides, iron mines in present day Jharkhand were accessible and provided resources for tool and weapons, that is iron mined around. In fact, students, in one of the videos I had told you, in ancient world, iron was a very, very prized commodity, because iron was not found in most of the places around the world, because those places, the mines had not been discovered uh, till then, okay, in the earlier times. Yes. So, elephants, an important component of the army, were found in forests of the region, because, yes, those places have a lot of forest. And students, when we are talking about here Bihar, it doesn't mean Magad, that it doesn't mean that just the Bihar and the Bihar. We are also talking about a lot many areas of that would go into Nepal as well. Okay. Uh, Also, the Ganga and its tributaries provided a means of cheap and convenient communication. Cheap and convenient, because you do not have to chop off trees to make roads, and because you had so many rivers, so, and that too navigable throughout the year. So you could have boat, you could have, people used to cross from one bank to the other. In fact, students, even today, if you go to Bihar, you still see boats ferrying people from one part of, or one bank to the other, and one part of the place to the other. There are, all the towns are on the river banks. Okay. In fact, right from Uttar Pradesh, if you see, just take river Ganga for example, all the major towns, Banaras, Allahabad, and once it enters Bihar, then Patna, and then once it enters you know Hooghly, then that is next to Calcutta, and then finally it goes into Ganga Sagar, that is today half of Bengal and half of Bangladesh. So all the major towns have developed around them. The same thing in South India, where most of the major towns are around River Kaveri or Godavari or Narmada. Okay. So that is how it was with Magad as well. However, early Buddhist and Jain writers also wrote about Magad, attributed its power to the policies of individuals, ruthlessly ambitious kings, of whom Bimbisara, Ajatsatru, Mahapadmananda are the best known, and their ministers who helped implement the policies. Students, Bimbisara was considered to be, or rather is considered to be, one of the first great rulers of India, the first great rulers and first ruthless ruler of India, because Indian rulers were mostly peace loving, but he was around 600 BC. Okay, that is 600 years before Christ, and he also ruled in Magad, and yeah, and at that point, and even so early, he had a very expansionist idea of being the ruler, and he had occupied Anga kingdom, and laid the foundation of the later modern empire. So Mahapadmananda, who after he came after Bimbisara and Ajatsatru, he found most of the work had already been done by very ambitious but very brave and very ruthless rulers, Bimbisara and Ajatashatru. Bimbisara's son was Ajatashatru actually, and Mahapadmananda was from a different dynasty, that is Nanda dynasty. Okay, and Bimbisara attended, and you have to, the one very interesting thing about Bimbisara was that he became ruler when he was barely 15 years, yes. Okay. And he started this Haryanka dynasty, and he was the one who for the first time made Magad the great Magad. The Magad came into prominence during Bimbisara. And one very important other thing which I would like to say is Bimbisara was a contemporary of Gautam Buddha and Bhagwan Mahavir. In fact, both father and son had met these two uh, great teachers of spiritualism in India. Okay. And Initially, that is the next paragraph. Initially, Rajgir, that is today it is known as Rajgir, was the capital of Magad. Interestingly, the old name means the house of the king. Rajgir was a fortified settlement located among hills. Later, in the 4th century before Christ, the capital was shifted to Patliputra, that is the present day Patna, commanding routes of communication along Ganga, because Patna happens to be right next to River Ganga. Okay, an early empire. The growth of Magad culminated in the emergence of Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, who founded the empire, that is 321 BC, extended control as far northwest as Afghanistan and Balochistan, and his grandson Ashoka, arguably the most famous ruler of early India, conquered Kalinga, that is present-day coastal Orissa. Um, we know that Chandragupta Maurya was the one who started um, the Mauryan dynasty, because Ashok was part of Mauryan dynasty. Now, students, let me just scroll a bit back. Yes, if you look at, we were talking about Bimbisara and Ajat Shatru, and after Ajat Shatru, it was Mahapadmananda, but Chandragupta Maurya had fought Mahapadmananda's son, that was Dhananand. Okay, yes, he was overthrown by Chandragupta Maurya, and Chandragupta Maurya became the ruler of Magad. And at that point in time, students, Magad was then the richest, the most powerful Mahajanpad, or the place in India, or the kingdom in India, something which the soldiers of Alexander the Great, when they had come to India, and uh, then Chandragupta Maurya was not the ruler. The ruler was Dhananand. Okay, but even the soldiers of Alexander the Great, they were not very keen to fight and go as far as Magad, because they knew that Magad would be a tough nut to crack, because they had, in the western part of India, they had been very successful in their military adventures, but they knew that eastern part, that is whole after Uttar Pradesh, it was all Magad. It was a massive Magad influence. They would not be able to defeat the massive armies of Dhananand, and that power, in fact, was further augmented and increased by Chandragupta Maurya, because so you can say that Magad had been very lucky when the first foundation was laid by someone as focused, I would say, as Bimbisara, because before Bimbisara, there was Magad did not have a great military tradition like that. Okay, so Bimbisara was the one who was hell bent upon expanding the influence of his influence, of course, and of course the influence of his own kingdom. And then that tradition was continued by his son Ajat Satru, and